Hey everyone, welcome back to the Evolve Marriage podcast. So Kate and I did something recently that completely caught us off guard. We took an Enneagram test. So I remember Kate was talking about Enneagram years ago. And so she brought up this quiz, and honestly, I just thought it'd be this fun little thing to do. Nothing serious. But when we opened the results, it felt like someone had been secretly watching our marriage for the last 20 years. It nailed my patterns. It nailed Kate's patterns. It even explained why we click so well and why we tend to bump heads in the same exact ways sometimes over and over again. So I decided to reach out to somebody who is an expert on this. And in today's episode, I'm sitting down with the amazing Christa Hardin from the Enneagram and Marriage podcast. She breaks down what the Enneagram actually is, how it helps couples understand each other on a much deeper level, and why I can feel like you finally have this cheat sheet for your relationship, which I know for Kate and I, it brought a lot of great things to light and opened up some great conversations about our behavior. So if you ever wondered, why does my partner do that? Or why do they keep having the same arguments over and over again? This one is going to hit home. So let's jump in. All right, Christa. So we have Christa Hardin from the Enneagram and Marriage podcast. Welcome, Christa. I'm so happy that you're here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Eric. I am thrilled to be here to talk with you guys about Enneagram and all things marriage.
Awesome. Really, just to like frame this conversation, I think, before we had a discussion, your team sent Kate and I kind of the Enneagram quiz, if you will. So we went on and we did it. We looked at our types. I was blown away on like how close it essentially kind of hit us right in the jaw. Kate and I were laughing. We were in the kitchen last night, kind of going over it again. And like, this is wild about how, like we just answered a bunch of questions and then it told us a little bit about ourselves. And we're like, yep, that's us. Oh yeah, that's us. And so really powerful tool to share insight about ourselves and our relationships.
Yes, I'm so glad you had that experience, Wes, and I had that as well. And I think with all of us coming from a psychological angle and you learned so many tests throughout your training, we really just didn't expect that. Like you, even a good friend had told me, did you ever take the Enneagram? And I was like, yeah, I took it on some coaching page. And she's like, I know you were the assessor at your psychological studies place back in the day. And she's like, and I know you're passionate with couples. You really need to give it another look. And when I did, like yourself, I really just got so into it. And in fact, I got so locked in that I never looked away because it became so helpful for my couples. So out of 20 years of couples work, now I've been using it for almost 10. And it's just been such a game changer.
Oh, amazing. So maybe for the new listeners who aren't quite sure what it is, maybe you can tell us a bit about what the Enneagram is and how it can really help us not only create insight about ourselves and our own behavior, but really how we relate to others.
Yeah. So the Enneagram is like other psychological measures in that, like you and your wife did, you take the test and it's something that you answer questions about yourself psychologically. How do you feel about being with others? How do you experience social situations? Do you like to be a leader? And you're going to come up with, instead of just the typical behavioral response on the Enneagram like you get with other measures, here you get a deeper dive into your soul, like you and Kate found out, where it's like, oh, not only are you going to get just a spitfire back at what you put in, like I'm gregarious, I'm exploratory, but you're also going to hear what's underneath people who are gregarious and exploratory, which is typically an evasion of feelings. And the Enneagram takes you down to the levels of core fears and core motivations so that when we actually get back to the practical, like you just asked, what do we do in our marriages? We now have a deeper guide, not just a behavioral analysis. Yeah, I knew that about you. I knew you were this or that. I knew you were a perfectionist. But now it's like, oh, I now realize underneath a perfectionist is somebody who's afraid of being wrong and bad. And they're also really wanting to be right. That's something that motivates them, is to do the right thing. So when you have these little cheat sheets, if you will, in your marriage, it gets you so much farther into your spouse's motivation for everything they're doing that's annoying you in your marriage. And you also see your own stuff. So you're like, now you're reading my mail too. And I'm not perfect either. So it's been a gift, but also it's of course like very stretching, right?
Yeah. And I think for me, like as I was reading it, because it is very extensive, like that's what I got, I'm a total data nerd. And so when I was like reading it, it went into not only me, but then it said like, hey, how do you relate to the other types? And then I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm a 4, Kate's a 3. So like, how do we relate? Yeah. And then it was, so it was sharing a lot about our dynamic. But one of the other powerful things was that it also kind of talked about this idea of like the light side and the dark side, essentially, right? Because it's not just, hey, this is my behavior. It's, hey, what do I do when I'm in self-protection mode? What do I do when I'm in more of a collaboration at my best?
Hmm.
And so maybe you can talk about how you've been able to introduce this to couples in your practice, and really why is it that you keep leaning on this tool in order to help couples in their relationships?
Well, this is a great question. There's 9 types, and 3 of them, like you and Kate, are in the heart grouping. You love feelings, even if sometimes a type 3, like your wife, she's going to be doing, and not always in her feelings. She's still great at reading a room. So 3 of the types are really good at feelings. 3 of the types are really good at, like I said, right and wrong, justice orientation. And 3 of the types are really good at thinking. Already, when you go into your marriage, you're really in a great spot if you know this person wants to be loved because they're feelers. This person wants to be right and have justice because they're gut types. And then this person, and it could even be a child at this point, or, of course your marriage only has 2 people, but this person is very analytical and wants to feel safe. So already right there, you get more than you do with something like a Myers-Briggs, which by the way, I also love, but that will just tell us more of our functions for behavior. When you get to these Enneagram groupings, you see people who are fear types or who want to be safe. They've had a time in their life where they didn't feel safe. The people who want to be loved, they've had a time in their life when they felt rejected and unloved. The people who want to do the right thing have been seeing people taken advantage of. And these are their beautiful gifts. So it's, like you said, really neat to know that. So instead of just going into that typical space in our marriage, like, oh, you're getting on my nerves. I remember at the beginning, I liked you, but now I'm getting annoyed by your bad stuff. You can come back to, oh, like I just thought of my husband, Wes. He's a type 1. That's one of the types that's for justice. And I think I'm remembering that he loves doing the right thing. That is so attractive that he cares so much about that. And I think that for when couples are now maybe even thinking, I want to take this test and find out, know that it's important you don't just take a test and then say, this is my type. Take it at truity.com or another reputable site and then ask yourself, is this me? Because as you and I just said, it goes so deep that if you get your type wrong, we don't want you on the roadmap that won't serve you as well. I'm sure you relate to each one of the 9 types a little bit, but one of them probably really has your name on it. And so when you can find that, you can get this traction in your marriage for these conversations. Okay, so if I need to be safe, like me, Christa, because I'm a 7, and my husband, Wes, they're just numbered types 1 through 9. 1 wants to do the right thing. How can we make sure that when we go see the in-laws or when we put our kids in a certain program, that I feel safe about it and he feels right about it? And you also heard me say you and your wife are heart types. How can Wes and I also make sure we don't forget that shadow of the types we're not, our heart? So it's an immediate great tool to give you guys a sense of these groupings and many other groupings found in the Enneagram. I won't give you all the details because that would be overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you're kind of like sharing into this. I guess the question that comes to mind for me is, so much of as you're saying it, like I'm a 9, I'm a 10, I'm a 7. It almost like it takes on this identity. And my first question is like, do people tend to shift over their lifetime from like one type to another? Or is there an idea of like, no, this is like your core behavior? Because I mean, for me as an adult, like I've changed so much over the last 20 years. I assume that, my answers would be different based on when I took the quiz.
Yeah, that is such a great question. And I don't think anyone can definitively answer it. I really don't. I've thought a lot about it. But I think I'm leaning towards believing that we're all born with an innate gift and that we all will have a certain level of health or stress, probably both at different times within our main framework, our main gifting. Like you're always going to have that engineer brain, or you're always going to be good with paying attention to details, or you're going to have a joyful countenance. But there's going to be moments where you're really like, if you're joyful like me, that you have a lot of scattered moments. And then there's going to be moments when it's just positive and cheer and optimism. But it's going to reflect your stress level at the time too, how that gift is seen. An example I have of that is that when I was a baby, in my baby book, my mom has written, baby Christa is so joyful. And so much of me thought when I was growing up and having trauma, like the reason I'm who I am now is because I had to be this way. I had to be optimistic in the face of hardship. But when I see that baby book, I see that was my gift. It's just transitioned through the years into different iterations. And then lastly on that note is I don't think people who don't like the Enneagram get this part. And this is so important, is we don't want to define ourselves just by that box. We want to become more expansive. If we're a 4, we want the 3 wing, we want the 5 wing, the types near us. We want to learn what our stress and health arrows are, other types. And what that really means is let's embrace the best of all the 9 types as best as we can. And like you said, maybe later that leads to, oh my gosh, lately I've been testing more as a 5 than a 4. And that really is who I am at the core. But it's also more expected that your main type will not change over the years, but you will get healthier and become more expansive.
Yeah, that's great insight. And what I'd love to do next is kind of nerd out on Kate and I, my wife and I. We did the test. So for me, I'm a 4, which I think was like very like individualist, right?
Yes.
That was kind of the idea.
Yep. Creative, artistic, melancholy, deep diver.
Yeah, that's right. And when we were talking about it, like I don't really plan for the future in a sense. I'm like, wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm passionate. Yeah, I love that intensity. And then Kate, she was a 3. And again, we have wings. For me, I'm a 4 with an 8 wing, which I think was like the challenger, right? So certainly there's like an intensity to me. Yeah, that's right.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kate, she was a 3 with a 9 wing. And that led to her being really like achievement focused, loves success, loves doing things really well, but then also this like people pleasing aspect of it.
Yes.
Am I kind of getting it right?
You are getting it right, that I think you guys took a great measure that gave you your top type and then your next top type. And that's what I love, is that sometimes people think, oh, if you're a 4, you could never be like an 8, or if you're a 3, you could never be like a 9. So you're helping us to know there's so much more nuances, and we call those tri-types in the Enneagram world. We really nerd out deep. I'm like, oh, I actually consider myself a 7-4-9 because I'm this heart type, this head type, this body type. But when we use wings, specifically that language, it would be the types around you. So you could be a 4 wing 3, a 4 leaning on 3 behavioral. So you could be like, I'm a deep artist, but I also have a lot of achiever, which I honestly would think you also have a lot of achiever, being the successful podcaster that you are. Or you could be a 4 wing 5. And that would be like, I'm a 4 who loves depth, but I also love research and I love diving in and really investigating. Now, the more mature we are, the more we really see both sides of our type. Like you will eventually and may already have some of either of those 3 and 5 traits. But you also, like you said, you resonated with the type 8, which I thought when I first met you and read about you on your page, I thought you were a type 8. So it's fun for me to hear that was a part of you.
Yeah. What was it about me? So now I'm like getting curious. What was it about kind of some of the things that you took away from what I put out there that like I was a type 8? Because type 8's the challenger, right? Is that?
Yeah. So I saw very clarified language, which is always something I'm a bit jealous of, being a 7 who can be scattered and very heady and all over. And so I saw he has like such good, decidedly strong language on his podcast. Often 8s we think of as masculinity. And I'm like, we're going to be talking about that over at my podcast. I'm like, he is somebody who is excellent at making sure that we know the main points of things and then getting them out. But hearing that you're a heart type also helps me to see your invitation as that 4 part of you into marriage, into depths, and into creativity. And why, when I read your story, I see that early in your marriage, you, after the honeymoon period, felt a little disillusioned. Like, now what? And that's something I deal with a lot of 4s, where they're like, I want it to be romantic stars and everything at all times. And so like, I see your 4 and your 8.
Yeah. And I would say, because now you're saying the 8, you're championing it, you're being very kind. And I really appreciate that. I think, when I told Kate that I was an 8, she was like very straight faced and said, yeah, that makes total sense. Because there's a shadow side to it as well, right? In a sense, there's a little bit of coldness to me. I'm very direct at times. And that's like when my 8 comes out. So is that making sense? Am I kind of like flowing with this?
Yeah, it's like she's like, I'm like romanticizing it with you guys. And plus, I'm a positivity type and I'm a marriage coach. So I'm always going to be finding the best and blowing on those little embers. But of course, we know when we're doing our deep dives in marriage and we're actually with our spouse, the natural tendency of humans is to negatively scan for problems. And so she's like, yeah, I know the 8 part of you is there. And here's the dark side of 8, that you can be overbearing or be over the marriage, but maybe not as in the marriage, or very direct. And there's all these good and bad to every one of the types. So I love that she felt safe to tell you that, because she's like, hey, maybe if I share this insight with him, we can even get another layer of work done.
Yeah. And I think like, for us, what we talk about a lot on the podcast is so many of these gifts have kind of two parts to it. You said earlier, but like some of the things that I really loved about Kate, like one of the things that I love so much about her is that everyone seems to love her. When everybody's like,
Yeah.
oh, what's Kate like? I'm like, oh, you're going to love her. Like,
Yeah.
because she really has this tendency to connect well with people. And over time, we've been together now 21 years. I also see that leans into like people pleasing tendency, which now it can be frustrating to me. I'm like, hey, you don't need to say hi to everybody at this party. Like, we just need to get here and then go. And I
Yeah.
realized that in long-term marriages, us going through this Enneagram type, the reason it was so expansive is it really championed what was really great, which to me felt like this affirmation of who I was. Like, but there wasn't anything wrong with me, right?
Right.
Like, it's okay to be a challenger. Here's the values of it. Here's why it's so great. And then it's also worded as like this, like you're saying, kind of like, yeah, and just watch out for this, like be careful because you could fall into this type of behavior, which can lead to disconnection and kind of being seen a certain way. And so, yeah, love how
Absolutely.
expansive it is. I can see why you have been introducing it to your practice in such a great way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my next question is, okay, so I'm a listener, listening to all of this is great. This sounds awesome. What can I do to get started and really like invite my partner into it? How do you typically introduce this to couples? What do you think the best way is to get into this?
I think it's helpful to go to a reputable site like truity.com, or you could go to my site, enneagramandmarriage.com. I have more of a typing guide. And in fact, I love the pairing of going to both sites because you take your test at a really good site like Truity, who does almost 1 million psychological tests a year. They've actually paired up with me to do a in-person study on Enneagram anyway. And then my booklets are sold at their website too, just as a disclaimer, but it's not something you have to buy. You can do their test for free. They give you a pie chart. They show you your top types. And then at my site, I have just a nice little booklet, a freebie. As soon as you get your emails sent to me, it's like you get in exchange. Here's what the type 1 core issue is. Here's what the core gift is. Here's the fear part too. And can I make sure my test that I took was correct? And this is me at my gift and at my worst. And again, we already said it. You might need to sit with that. Like, even you may need to sit with, I wonder if me, Eric, if I am more of a 4 or more of an 8, which one really is the most heavy hitting? And once you and your spouse have really sat with that for a while, it will be very helpful to talk it out together and to say, here's what I've learned about my type at the basic level. This is my core fear. This is my core gift. And then I have a number of free resources at my website to walk you through on my freebies page, where you can get my downloadable guides. You can keep learning. I have paid resources there. I have tons of podcasts for you. I have a book I've written called The Enneagram and Marriage with Baker Books, which I go through every pairing type in detail. I have pairing guides on my website. There's a myriad, but it's going to be, even our more intense types will want to dip into everything. And then some people will be like, no, I'm going to check out your book at the library. I like everything free. So it's up to you.
Yeah. It sounds like there's so many resources. And so we're going to link all of those in the show notes.
Thank you.
And so I'd love to know too, Christa. I mean, it's beautiful that you have a background in helping couples and you have this knowledge. So Kate and I, now we have this knowledge.
Yes.
How do you recommend we start utilizing it in order to improve our relationship? Because to us, we understand there's a huge difference between knowing and doing. And so what does it look like to help couples kind of put this into practical steps to change their realities, if that makes sense?
Oh, yeah. Once you have those insights and you've been able to say, this is me at my best, this is me at my worst, you can have more curious conversations around it. Just for starters, wow, wonder what that's about. Do you think that's your gift? And just have some open-ended conversations where they're not going to land at the beginning. And I know we want that. We want the practical tips. But first, just insight-driven questions about each other feels the most safe. And I love safety. I already said that's my kind of personality. So I want you to make each other feel safe by just knowing it can be hard to see your type. Like you even elaborated on a little bit with us. Like it was kind of a lot to see that. And I know when my husband first heard he was a 1, he pushed the computer away viscerally and he goes, I'm a perfectionist. So just sitting with it and being like, oh, but I love that about you, sweetie. Sitting with the highs and the lows of each type together first and foremost, just being human and saying, okay, I found out I'm a 5, but I'm so much more than a 5, right? Like we're not just going to throw out those numbers and labels all the time. And that can be the danger of Enneagram work or any system where you're just like, oh yeah, I'm an INFP and that's who I am and that's all I am. So just knowing that the conversations need to be curious, not definitive at the beginning. And then I would say after that, really dig into the practical tools that I or others have. There's a great book by Ian Cron also called The Road Back to You. It sold millions of copies because it is such a good definitive book on it. There's a checklist, there's directions for what each type needs to do. And if you want to get into a really specific rubric for your marriage, that's where my work comes in. And I give you date night tips, tips for your type for sex, tips for your type for how each type does conflict differently. I go into your instincts, which are my favorite area of the Enneagram, and my next book will be about that area. So there's a lot of areas, and how would we decide which one you go into? Which area of your marriage is really throwing you back the most? And if it's conflict, then that's what you do is you say, well, what is a type 7 like in conflict? What is a type 2 like? I have episodes on that, or as I said, lots of freebies. But look for the area you're in, and you'll find there are so many Enneagram resources for that area. And it is such a cheat sheet. And I'll tell you one more thing quickly about that is when you go to a site like About John Gottman, you get general marriage tools, and they're amazing, and we need those tools, or internal family systems, or emotionally focused therapy, anything you like to study. There's something good probably you can get there, but it's general tips. And when you get into the Enneagram, what works for a type 9 does not usually work for a type 4. So you have to get into these nuances of, oh, when I'm in an argument with you, I want direct communication. But when I'm in an argument with you, I want positivity. So how can we negotiate that? That's going to be a new conversation. But at least there's some insight, and it's not this blame game of like, I'm good and you're bad, which most of us do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great answer. And I think a lot about, a lot of the stuff that I read in terms of my type, Kate's type, and you've mentioned it many times on this podcast, is it really is focused on your gifts, right? It's like, what do you do so well? And Kate and I, a lot in our marriage, and what we always recommend to our couples that we work with is like, hey, focus on what you do really well, right? And introduce more of that in your relationship. Of course, we're going to have blind spots, but the reality is that you have some gifts that you can bring to this relationship. And so what if you just, really amplified that gift, and you have a partner that said, hey, I accept that gift. Do more of it. You know what I mean? And I think, I say that all the time about Kate. It's easy for me, like you said, we have a negative bias to be like, oh, like I wish we could have these deep, long conversations about my feelings and understand that Kate might have a resistance to that. And it's totally normal based on her type. But Kate has a lot of great gifts, which is we work excellent as a team. We, she is high achiever. She goes after what she wants. She kicks butt. And I think leaning more on that would lean towards making our marriage great. Is that making sense?
It does. It's a beautiful way to get work done. And we know even from John Gottman's main marriage studies that couples who are healthy, even within conflict, their conversations are 4 out of 5 times positive. So you absolutely need that, even if you're not a classic positivity type, which are the 7s, 2s, and 9s. All of us need to be more positive. Even 7, 2s, and 9s can get off track, as I know myself. So I just want you guys to hear what Eric just said of being positive about your spouse's type, but also knowing our greatest strengths can be our greatest weaknesses too. And that is so humbling. And that's why being more self-disclosing is great. Like instead of me saying, Wes, I just found out you're type 1, it totally explains why you get annoyed with little details or, starting to go off on the negative. I can go into mine. I'm a 7, and as much optimism as I bring, I also realize that must be hard at times because I get so scattered. And it allows your spouse to feel that safety with you. Again, that not only is it right, safe, but also connective when we can disclose our own issues. And like we've both said a number of times, we fall into that fundamental attribution error otherwise, where we think I am better than my spouse. So it really levels the playing field, brings in humility. But once again, we're not saying that we don't want to do that work about our biggest gift. Because for instance, a 3, you mentioned Kate, like if we just tell her, keep going and killing it out there with goal getting, she might never know how authentically loved she is for who she is underneath the goal getting. That's not as likely to be a problem with you because 4s are really good at authentically loving, but there may be another type 3 out there who just needs to be told, even if you don't make the grade, even if you're not the one on the stage killing it, I love you no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine my kind of 8 in me, I'm just making this up right now, but it's like me constantly challenging Kate.
Correct.
And then her like needing to do more, and then it must lead to a dynamic, when we're in those modes where it's like, ooh, there's not a lot of room for emotional connection. There's not a lot of room for vulnerability.
Yeah,
right?
That's why I didn't go with the 8. with the easy one because I'm a positivity.
It's there. I know it's there. I own it.
I was like, I'm going to talk about his 4 right here. But of course, like I have that too. There's such a rub. Of course, 3 and 8. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder they're so big. Like you're so dynamic. You do so much. I always see that with 3s and 8s. They're just so big in the world and beautifully doing things. But like you said, learning your softer side, like 8s can be soft and strong. That's one of our favorite phrases for 8s. And so it's just beautiful for you to hear that and say, yeah, I can actually be a little softer. Like, hey, as much as I want to go get with you and this and this and do this, it's like, can I just stop and pause and say, you're already doing amazing? And even if you just need to rest, I want you to know you're already doing amazing. Like that goes such a long way for a type 3.
Yeah, I love that. So maybe one last question. We have a listener who's listening to this right now and they're thinking, okay, I'm on board. How do I introduce this to my partner? Right. So maybe we often find that one person is usually the catalyst for change in a relationship. There's always an introduction. So what do you suggest the partner who's listening to this can do to introduce this idea to their partner?
Well, I hinted at it and it's an awesome question because we can do this to ad nauseum, especially somebody like me who's done all the psychological tests on my husband, including intelligence tests. He's just like, one more thing. Like some of you have done that to your spouses and they're like, really though? And sometimes you just need to know in their timing, they'll do this. So you say, hey, I've got a great personality inventory. And if you're going to forget about it, make yourself an email reminder in a week. Hey, did you ever get to that? And check in gently. Maybe even if they still aren't interested, say, hey, I'd love to do that at the beginning of our date night next time. One more way, though, that I would specifically say, no matter when or how you get each other to take this test or measure or talk it out, would be to come in like I did with my weaknesses that my husband can easily see because we've been together almost 30 years as a couple. So if I come in and I say, Wes, oh my gosh, I found out that I love freedom, but sometimes that can make me really not want to lock in on plans. He's like, what test is this? What test just did me right by validating everything I know about you? And then I can, of course, come in with like, Wes, also it says that I'm so kind and joyful. And he's like, yes, I love that about you. So you see how if you self-disclose first and you're a bit more vulnerable first, of course, there has to be an automatic safety together to make you want to feel safe to do that. But if there is, that's how I definitely bring it in first with your own strengths and weaknesses, and then give them an energy that they want to do their own versus forcing it upon them.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I think another frame that Kate and I had was, we wanted to make it fun. And I think it was a fun experience for us. Like, I don't want to take that away. It didn't feel weighty. It didn't feel like we did it. And then we like looked at the types and we did a bunch of research and it really felt cool to be like, yeah, that's me. Oh God, that's me. And Kate also said, a lot of the stuff she loved about me that was mentioned there and vice versa. So it really created this beautiful moment where we sat together, we went through it, we had fun with it. And I think it can bring a lot of, like you're saying, optimism to your relationship. And so yeah, highly, highly recommend doing this. So Chris, I want to thank you. Yeah. Where can people find you? Where can they go to get more of you? I mean, you just have such a great energy and I think you're bringing so much beauty to the world. So yeah, tell us.
I would really send you to enneagramandmarriage.com for my website or to my Instagram. If you're a follower over at IG, just Enneagram and Marriage. Those are places you can find my books and so many more tools, but especially the website, enneagramandmarriage.com. The podcast is also named that. And I love what you said there, Eric. Thank you for having me on. This brings you optimism and optimizing, the most gorgeous glow that you get with your spouse when you realize, here's our gifts, here's what they look like together. It is so much fun. And that's what I've really loved with my couples is most of the time you're coming in and you're getting help for the two of you, but you're also learning how you can serve the world together when you learn how your types run. So I love that you brought that up about optimism. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Christa. We'll link everything in the show notes and I highly encourage the listeners to jump into this. We had so much fun with it. And it was such a gift to us, to our relationship. So thank you.
So glad. Thank you.
All right. I hope this conversation gave you some real clarity about yourself, about your partner, and the way the two of you are wired together. If you decide to take this Enneagram after this episode, shoot me a message or comment below and let me know what types came up for you, or even if you've heard of Enneagram before. I love hearing how couples are using these type of tools to understand each other at a much deeper level. And if you're in a season where things feel a bit off for you, where the spark is dimming, the connection maybe feels a bit harder, or you're just stuck in the same disconnection loop without any sign of repair, you can grab the Reignite Your Marriage Blueprint. It's totally free. It's a simple, practical guide that walks you through the key steps to bring back connection, spark more intimacy, and create a stronger, healthier marriage with just a few simple skills. This is not therapy. It's just tools that actually help couples get closer again. And you can grab that totally for free in the description below. So thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you in the episode next week.